World leaders finally reached an outline agreement over Iran's nuclear program last week after marathon negotiations in Lausanne. The news sparked scenes of jubilation on the streets of Tehran and hopes among ordinary Iranian people that once finalised, the agreement will kickstart the country's blighted economy.
Iran's hardliners may be unhappy to see a nuclear agreement with the world powers by which the Islamic regime has to accept huge compromises on its nuclear ambitions. But ordinary people and the business community cannot wait to see the tentative agreement turns into a comprehensive deal by the end of June. Many Iranians who struggle with economic hardships, in particular high inflation and unemployment, hope removal of economic sanctions will bring prosperity to the country.
Talks in Lausanne were extended by 48 hours before a deal was reached after 8 days of negotiations, with both sides forced to make compromises.
The US had to essentially accept that it was not going to secure the complete dismantlement of the Iranian nuclear program, that there are going to be centrifuges left in Iran, etc. The Iranians, for their part, had to agree to an incredibly intrusive set of international inspections which are meant to ensure that Iran is always at least 1 year away from being able to create a nuclear bomb. So it's a compromise for both sides. There's a long way to go because both the American side, led by John Kerry, the Secretary of State, and the Iranian side, led by Mr. Zarif, the Iranian Foreign Minister, face opposition at home that could derail the deal.
Iran has heralded the deal as historic, saying it's the first step towards a new and less hostile relationship with the West.
If America was in earnest that Iran getting a bomb was unacceptable, if they couldn't negotiate that bomb away, they had to essentially blow it away through a war. Obama has always, ever since he came in 2008, set his face against another war in the Middle East, another war with Iran. And really, this is the culmination of that policy. Of course, the skeptics say he's gone too far to secure that deal, but I think for him, it was really a central goal.
Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons, period.
Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has condemned the agreement, saying it poses a threat to international security and to Israel's existence. Israel will continue to lobby the US to impose even tougher conditions before the deal is finalised. But there's a sense that Mr. Netanyahu may privately be more pleased than he seems.
I think there's definitely a disconnect between what he's saying in public and what Israel can realistically hope for and expect. And anything short of Israeli unilateral action, which is a whole other topic of conversation, they'd be hoping for the toughest possible deal in terms of containing Iran's nuclear program and the best possible inspections regime and the greatest safeguards and the slowest and most cautious lifting of sanctions. And I would argue that he's been successful in pushing Israel's desires and agenda on Iran to the top of the international agenda and making the toughest possible deal.
Negotiators will now try to turn the framework agreement into a final deal by the deadline at the end of June. But the terms of the deal are still vulnerable, with fierce opposition both in Washington and Tehran.
The vulnerability in America is the Senate and Congress, which is pretty opposed, but Obama seems to have a strategy which allows him to get the deal through without getting it picked apart in Congress, but that's the danger. And in Iran, it's the politics, obviously, not being such an open society, are much harder to read, but there are hardliners there, and you have fairly open debate in the Iranian press and quite a deal of pushback by President Rouhani, Foreign Minister Zarif, who are behind this deal, pushing back against the hardliners. So some of the argument there is visible. The big question is, will the current government and the president get the backing of the supreme leader, Mr. Khatami? And it looks like they are going to get that he's been behind this nuclear deal. And if that happens, they'll probably be able to get it through.
Both Iran and the West made compromises, and there's relief on both sides that a draft agreement was reached. But with both sides facing opposition at home, there's still a lot of work to be done before the agreement is due to be finalised. Daniel Garrahan, Financial Times.